I come back and work at the store, get everything straightened out. I'm not playing. But what does happen one night, it just got to me, and I closed. After I closed the store, I got in my car because Claude Johnson that came over one time. Willie T came over, and the drummer Alex, I think his name was. All separate times. Clay didn't come over himself to say, but he did come over one time because he had an aunt he used to live with over on the south side. But I wouldn't play. I was, going to work. I was going to be a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I closed the store up, and after I closed the store, I just got in the car and drove straight to Dallas, over to the Green Parrot, and sat in. And that same shit happened again, where this experience comes over me. I'm not playing the drums. I'm there manipulating, but it's totally on automatic, autonomous. I'm enjoying it too. I'm outside looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by the time we get through and I come back, yeah, of course I got the gig. Then they tell me when you come over, we want you to work in the Red Tops. That's
a club or a band?
Red Tops was a group that played at the Woodman.
Okay.
With Worm, Claude Johnson on baritone. What was it? Smith was. What was Smith's first name? He played bass. He lives in Washington D.C. now, but he had come from California. Him and his sister had moved. They had sent him here to Dallas to live. He already knew the bass. And, he'd been playing out down on Central Avenue and shit.
Mm-hmm.
So Willie T, I think was playing trumpet. Sometime, what's his name would be there? My sponsor, I tell you, Leroy Cooper. He'd come there sometime. It'd be a lot. It just, whatever musicians were in town, they came there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 4 o'clock every Sunday. Everybody still had on their Sunday go to meeting clothes. And we had to have our suit and ties anyway. And it was bring your own bottle. And it was no fighting, no shooting, no stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
It was just people coming out. And those who wanted to dance in the back could dance. And those who wanted to sit at the table. And the people who ran things provided the ice and the sodas and shit, and the cups. And this was the music from 4 to 8 every Sunday. And then you go play the regular gig at the Parrot after that from 10 to 3 or 4 in the morning.
Okay.
So that's how that shit was working. Plus on Saturday afternoon it was matinee. And we started work, if not Wednesday, at least Thursday. It worked all the way through to Monday, because Monday was Blue Monday and you was always working then. And then in between that shit was the reason I never went up to Denton anymore, because I knocked this boy in the swimming pool. A white fellow come and took my cymbals, started banging on my shit, and the kind of person I just knocked. Nobody had trained me in that element, or told me what I wasn't supposed to do, what done and not done. So I never went back to Denton for 40 years until you arranged for me to come up to see. They're gonna do a tribute to him, Sam Rivers, this year at that Vision Festival. Right. My friend, what's his name? Jeff Schillinger emailed me, which we just lost too. Which was that information he was telling me. He always let me know what's going on up there, because he's the one who started what's called the Witness.
Mm-hmm.
These people, him and Jazz Mary and the rest of them, they all go around. They don't. Everybody, all the clubs know them. And he's one of these. That drawing I showed you where he did that. He does, and on those albums he does. He does a lot of stuff with William Park and all them people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they having that. But anyway, that wasn't the only time. I did some other shit over in Dallas one time. If you had interviewed Thomas,
mm-hmm.
then you would have had some other shit, because he knew shit that I couldn't. You just don't remember a whole lot of shit. The other people who with you do remember. And
what sort of plan was it?
we played Ekara, Nika's Dream, Scrapper for the Apple, All the Things You Are. around midnight. When that came out, Along Came Betty, which was all somewhere in that period of time. We played everything that was on Blue Note, Columbia, including Hit the Road Jack. God Bless the Child, Well You Needn't, In Walk Bud, Confirmation, whatever that song is. I knew all of them. They were just part of my life.
Anthropology.
Huh?
Anthropology.
Right. Scrapple. Bird Gets the Worm. Clay had made a couple of albums in California. Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. He used to play that. But I guess I always had the greatest pleasure playing Heart of Silver songs, tunes. It was so melodical and just enchanting to me, like Nika's Dream and other stuff. It was, up until he got to Sister Sadie, I think. But before that, all the other, especially the early stuff, he played with the early Jazz Messengers. Whatever those songs were, we knew them. But all the musicians, all over the country knew them, not just in Fort Worth. Any musician coming between here, cats coming out of town, or you go somewhere else, we go out to South Central. We're playing the same songs.
South Central LA?
Yeah. Everybody was playing, all the black musicians were playing and knew all the same songs. That's why we could all get up and jam and play the same thing, because we already knew all the same songs. It wasn't until the integration occurred that it started getting separated, dismantled, disposed, or dispoiled. Not the right word, but anyway, that's when it become unglued, I guess would be a better word to say. In other words, as a black musician, I could get on a train, go from here to St. Louis, and go and hear, what's that boy's name? I used to know all these cats' names. I see their face, but all them cats that Hicks knew, I introduced me to the bass player there. It was Mixon, Johnny Mixon, one of the best bass players in the St. Louis area. It was a couple of drummers anyway. One of the drummers was named Carter. Anyway, you could go to any of these places, anyway, these places are playing, and sit in because everybody knew the songs.
How did integration change that?
I would have to think to tell you in a more formalized way what come up theoretically with what I would, which is the only way I could give some kind of explanation of why they changed it. But it did change. It was no longer, even when I got to New York, working in the Joe Henderson Kenny Dorham Big Band. And when I used to go up to before I started working up there with Kenny Dorham, and actually I used to work there all the time with Ray Bryant, because Ray Bryant was the John Hammond's main boy, piano player for Columbia Records. All them early Aretha Franklin, that was Ray Bryant playing trio. And he had a hit song that I knew down here because I used to listen to it driving over Dallas to the distributor called Little Susie. He's from one of them Philadelphia cats, right? So we'd be out on the road on the Chiller circuit for a month or two, but by the time we come back to New York, we go right into Men's Playhouse. And then when we were there a couple of weeks, that's where I met DeLong. I met DeLong's mom when I first got there because Charles Tolliver took me by his house. I met his wife Nellie and boy, what's his name? His son, who's just coming in his teens then. I don't know why he took me by there. He took me there, and then he also took me out to John Coltrane's house and introduced me, which was way out in the island, but I had this little MGB sports car, brand new, and introduced me to Naima. Well, by the time I get situated in the months, less than a year of time, I'm living down with Benny Maupin. Benny Maupin is tapping. Well, I instead of getting confused, he was hitting the pussy, right? So her and Train already kind of separated. So she's at Benny Maupin's all the time. And one morning or something, we get up and we're there, and she's like, ain't Hattie. I mean, ain't Fanny down in the country who I grew up when I used to send me down to Iola. Same complexion, that same kind of look, that same witch. And she told me then, say, it'd be 14 years before your shit become viable, jumps off. And boy, was she right on target. Although I forgot about that shit, totally. But you also have to remember, this is a time at the age of here's the sunshine, wherever that is, and all that shit. You also have to remember it was just a different time period. Here's the coming together of the races, but also a separation of that which was uniquely ethnic in its own environment. If you look at that picture, well, up there you have the picture of Abbott Island group, but the real controversy was the reason Charles Tyler, and I told you this, didn't play out in Cleveland, because Abbott brought Michelle Sampson to the gig, not only because he played violin, but it also enhanced what he was doing. And Abbott had already spent a lot of time in Europe too. He also knew there was going to be a connection for it. I think I hadn't worked with that many white musicians before then. We never crossed. I mean, I'd go over to the east side, up to Basin Street and see Buddy Rich and see Gene Cooper over there at Metropole and shit. And they all used to have black musicians working with them, the older cats, right? But you have to remember that generation I came up with was the Miles generation, and we really wasn't supposed to like Louis Armstrong because he was old timey, pops with the handkerchief and grinning and going on. And I'm from the new school where people turn their backs on the audience and act hip, and the word cool is in and all that kind of shit. I mean, in the subculture. So you have to bring all these elements together with what made these things happen. So you ask, how did the integration? When I got to New York, the white jazz musicians worked with each other, and the black musicians worked with each other, and they weren't working together. But you still had situations where white musicians were trained just as equally in their own life experience in playing. The remnants of it would be somebody like Steve Gadd, who come up something like Buddy Rich out of one of them circus families, a carnival. You had all them carnivals and shit, and you had people, all clubs all over the country where white people trained too. So you had good musicians. You had the Four Brothers. You had the West Coast musician. You had Shelly Man, who was a fantastic drummer. You had a lot of people who could play. But once they started dying off, there wasn't no replacements. Because the environment that created the whole thing was being exacerbated. Fancy word, anyway. But that's what was going on. All right, so you had in New York City, you had these clubs like the Half Note down on Spring Street. You had the Village Vanguard. You had the Fire Spot. You had still on 52nd Street a couple of them clubs, and you had all them 5, 6, 7, 8 clubs up in Harlem. You go from place to place and just play, or listen to music, live music, right? That environment is not here. Plus, you had people making a living doing that. And we were talking about before, where you had this pride, because here was something that the black men could take pride in because we know we could do, and we felt it couldn't be stolen like everything else, which is what it boiled down to.
Mhm.
But it obviously, like Duke Ellington said, and like Art Blakely said, Duke Ellington said it took him 2,000 years to change Jesus from black to white. It's only going to take him 200 to change Martin Luther King from black to white. And Art Blakely said the same damn thing. But this wisdom comes from people who had traveled the world, who are already, I guess, from the witch doctor environment in their own communities, who had this extra sensitivity in the first place. And everybody knew it. We all knew. I mean, I was in Frank Foster's band after I came through my hellish period.
What period?
The drug period.
Okay.
I was with the first thing I really got back in was when I was working rehearsing uptown with Frank Foster big band. He had gotten hold of a lot of money somewhere, and who was in it? Kenny Rogers was on baritone saxophone. Tommy Tarantine was in the trumpet section. What's his name? Just passed away. Boy played. That's where I met Junie Booth, the bass player. We used to work with McCoy and Stanley Tarantine as a group. A lot of cats I met there. The same way I met a lot of cats in the Kenny Dorrington big band. And it's the same situation. When I get into these big bands, you meet so many cats who somebody come and say, "Hey man, you working this weekend? Are you working tomorrow? Are you working tonight?"
Mm-hmm.
So you was working all the time, I mean, just go to make the rehearsal, and in the rehearsal you meet these cats who saying, "Look, we got a gig next week or this week or that week."